afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this EPC policy dialogue that is focused on Russia's relentless assault on Ukraine's critical infrastructure, particularly energy infrastructure. I think we also need to bear in mind that these attacks are happening while Russia's total war is also going on at the front, including Russia's never-ending shelling of Ukraine's towns and villages, while also very paradoxically, we still have US-led efforts to agree a ceasefire continuing in the Middle East, among other destinations. Russia's goal is clearly, as it has been for a long time, to break the will of the Ukrainian people, which is why we're seeing these never-ending attacks. Now, our discussion today is going to look at the consequences of these attacks, including the humanitarian and economic consequences, and how Ukraine's partners are responding to this, and can the response, which is already significant, be further scaled up, and what more can be done, not only for this winter, which in many ways is only at the start. Ukraine could still see another 2 or 3 months of these freezing temperatures, but also what more can be done for the future, because the partners need to be preparing for the next winter season as well. So not just short term, but long-term planning as well. And we have a great panel of speakers with us today to talk about these issues. First and foremost, Olena Pavlenko, who is the president of the DiXi group, which is a well-known think tank and has been working on energy-related issues, among others, for many years, I think around two decades, if I'm not mistaken. Wioletta Dunin-Majewska, who is the Deputy Head of Cabinet for Commissioner Dan Jurgensen, who is responsible for energy and housing in the European Commission. Olena Budagovska, who is Advocacy and Communications Director at the NGO People in Need Ukraine, which has been extremely active on the ground doing important work, which we're going to hear about shortly. And last but certainly not least, we have Artur Lorkowski, who's the director of the energy community. Now, we were supposed to have Ukraine's Deputy Minister for Energy, Mr. Alexander Vyazchenko, with us today. Unfortunately, he's had an accident and he's no longer able to join. But we wish you, Alexander, a quick recovery from this unfortunate accident. So I would like to start with you, Olena, if you don't mind. And I would like to start by asking you to give us a sort of insight to how the situation is in Ukraine today, and perhaps in Kiev in particular. We know over the last couple of weeks there's been extremely low temperatures, sometimes beyond -20 at night, but also during the day. And people have been finding it increasingly difficult to cope, but resilient as ever, Ukrainians manage. But it would be great to get a picture of what's going on there today.
Many thanks, Amanda, for raising these questions and for the possibility to talk about the situation in energy sector in Ukraine to the distinguished audience. Maybe I will start from saying that Russia attacked energy infrastructure all the time since the full-scale invasion started. When we just started to synchronize with the European system, Russians started to attack our thermal power plants, hydropower plants. They captured our nuclear power plant. And in 2022, actually, they created a first blackout in Ukraine. But because of the turning the economy into the war mode, I would say, Russia increasingly started to produce more weapons, drones, and missiles. And it used all that to increase attacks on energy infrastructure as well. If we had more attacks on balancing generation, thermal power plants, hydropower plants in the first 2 years, during the last 2 years, they attack everything, electricity generation, gas production, all the infrastructure, and also heating sector. Let me please show you the latest International Energy Agency. It's a picture from their latest paper, which was published yesterday, I believe. You can see how much increased the number of attacks on the energy sector. And if you had few missiles attack 2, 3 years ago on one thermal power plant, now you have up to 40 missiles and 400 drones on one facility, which is really very hard to protect, even with old air defense systems and instruments. Yes, the temperature also played this winter against us. During the first 3 years of full-scale invasion, we had mild winter. This time we had a very cold winter, up to -20 in Kiev and in central Ukraine. It led to the situation with the combination of so many attacks to the I would say humanitarian crisis, because in Kiev we still have more than thousands of buildings, of multi-apartment buildings which are not heated, and we still have minus temperature outside at night. Russia is attacking I would say, three targets. One, this is Kiev as a symbol of Ukraine. All the embassies are here, the delegations come here, so they need to show that Kiev is destroyed. Second is cities and villages in the front line. The goal is there to make people just leave their houses, their places, and then increase the attacks and captures these territories. And the third is now also Western Ukraine, and the goal is actually to stop the possibility to get import electricity from European countries. So such types of attack, of course, they create a lot of troubles for our electricity system. In addition to that, there are attacks, as I said, on gas production, because Ukraine relies a lot on its own gas production, and transmission and distribution, such as transformers, substations, even small elements. Now they are under attacks. Just to say that what Ukraine needs now, in order to survive during the next few months, is protection. We need still a lot of stuff which will help us to build better protection around the facilities. And this is both passive protection and active protection. By active protection, I mean air defense system. And second is equipment, which can help the companies replace the damaged facilities, the damaged equipment, with a new one in the shortest term. So it will not take months to restart the electricity supply to particular regions, but a day or 2 days. This is still very much in need. We have Energy Community Secretariat here. I'm sure they will explain what are the instruments and possibilities to provide such support. I will stop right here now and will be happy to add more.
Thank you very much for this great overview. Perhaps I could just have one add-on question to that. I mean, could you say a few words about how the guys that are actually working to repair the damage in infrastructure, I mean, how they are able to hold up? I mean, because it's almost like a never-ending task to do that. I mean, how are they managing? And what would you, I mean, your role, DiXi Group, I think is playing an important role in this, in terms of sort of being responsible for sharing the lists of needs and whatnot with the European partners. I mean, how would you say the partners, not just European but international, are responding? I mean, is it quick enough? Could it be done, or could it be further speeded up?
Thank you. Regarding your first question, maybe just to show a very huge example, our main and engineer of our transmission system operator, Mr. Alexei Brecht, recently he died 2 weeks ago, I believe, when he was trying to repair one of the very complicated facility and restore electricity supply. In like war terms, that would be a general. So all the people who know how to fix the infrastructure, all people who somehow deal with infrastructure, all of them are involved. Because of the minus and high minuses, like minus 20 in Kiev, there are a lot of additional engineers. They were replaced, reallocated to Kiev to help. Also, we have, I think, 200 teams who were working in Kiev recently from all the regions, day and night, and they had to defreeze. I don't know whether it's correct word, defreeze the elements of the combined heating plants which were damaged or other facilities in order to start any repairing work. So that's a super hard conditions. A lot of people are trying to support them. We know that a lot of companies already started to feed the engineers. They are trying to provide them some additional heat or some additional equipment so people can help to repair infrastructure faster. Simultaneously, Russia is trying to kill such people, especially on the front line. And we have a lot of examples when you have electricians going to repair particular lines to restore electricity supply, and Russia hits them with drones. Basically, it kills them. And energy companies now also have to make a very hard decisions because they need to think how to protect those people who are going to absolutely risky work and with the possibility to be killed anytime. Regarding your second question, the support, it is coming. I think we had a more, I would say, more calm winter last year, and it was like a signal that probably Russia will not attack more the energy infrastructure. So the speed and of the support decreased a bit last year. But when the attacks increased in March 2025 on gas production and then increased hugely in October 2025 and further, the attention of international partners also increased, and we do have support from European countries, from the US, from many other colleagues, from Canada, with additional equipment. Yes, DiXi Group, we are part of the working group under the Ministry of Energy that collects the request from energy companies, what exactly additional equipment is needed. And then this working group reviews these requests and send them to Energy Community Secretariat. So the Secretariat is taking care then of procurements and additional this process of supply this equipment to Ukraine. Simultaneously, there are a lot of bilateral communication and cooperation. There are town-to-town, city-to-city cooperation when some particular mayors work with European cities, for example, to get generators or mobile boiler houses to install them and to heat the districts within the city. So the short answer would be that we do feel this support, of course. At the same time, it is hard to have this at the really high speed because the attacks increased and you have destructions almost every night. This night we had also another attack on Kiev with another problems with heat supply. My apartment is not heated right now. So the speed of equipment supply should also increase. Thank you.
Thank you, Olena. I will come back to you a bit later in the discussion. I just want to take the opportunity here to remind to the audience that they can put their questions into the Q&A box, or you can click on the hand icon. I forgot to do that at the beginning of the show. I'm sorry about that. I was just excited to get going. But please do put your questions there. But I want to actually come because the energy community was actually mentioned a couple of times. So I would like to actually to come to you, Arthur, because I think this is a good sort of, segue to you. I mean, could you elaborate a bit more on what Elena just mentioned about the important role that your officers are playing in terms of receiving the demands for different equipment for Ukraine, and how that actually happens?
Yeah, thank you very much, Amanda, for having me. And let me start by saying that what I understood from Olena, there are actually two layers of this discussion. One is the issue of providing Ukraine energy system with the equipment needed for the repairment. And the second topic is how the European Union market can be kind of reserve which Ukraine can use if necessary by importing electricity or gas from the EU, so that the electricity can be generated, heat can be generated in Ukraine. And let me elaborate on these two aspects. I mean, the Secretariat is deeply involved in the operation of the Ukrainian Energy Support Fund, the fund which has been established just a couple of days after the invasion started, and the fund proved to be very trustful and a very effective tool of providing the equipment to Ukraine. Since the very beginning, we mobilized more than 1.8 billion euro, and only since the mid-November 2025, for this winter season, the Secretariat mobilized with more than 36 donors, 520 million euro, which is needed for continuing procuring the materials and the equipment needed for Ukrainian companies. And this is important. The specific needs are being defined by the Ukrainian companies, those which have been affected, and then those needs are prioritized by the ministry, by the group where Olena is participating in, so that those requests can be properly selected and prioritized in order to address the places and the companies which are in the most need, but also where the support could have the biggest impact. What I would like, however, to underline is that the fund proved to be efficient, but also the European community, the European Union and the member states, they proved to be a very reliable partner for Ukraine. As I said, since mid-November, 520 million euro has been mobilized. So it means that the Team Europe works and the efforts being made by the Team Europe is a significant one, and this is providing tangible support every day to the Ukrainian companies. More importantly, however, this support is also provided to the social institutions, and the Ministry of Health, in cooperation with the Ministry of Energy, they pre-selected almost 700 hospitals, for example, on the roofs of which we are installing panels with the battery systems. And now we're having in progress 199 hospitals where this combined system of the solar panels and the battery systems are being installed, so that those health facilities, they can operate even under the shellings and after the bombing by the Russian army. And again, I would like to express my gratitude to the donors who donated 124 million for that. European Union, Sweden, Canada, Belgium, UK, Germany, those countries, they are contributing every day. And the second layer is much more complex. It is the question how Ukraine, by doing reforms, can integrate closer and better with the European Union market to get the influx of gas and electricity to be provided to the Ukrainian system whenever this electricity or this gas is needed. And this stronger and closer link with the European Union, this deeper integration makes Ukraine much more resilient and much more ready for counterfighting the damages which are being made by the Russian army. And I will give you the example, electricity market. A lot has been done. Olena already mentioned synchronization, which happened in March 2022. But since then, on top of this technical connection with the, or on top of the technical integration of the systems, a lot has been done to improve the trade in electricity between the EU and Ukraine and Moldova, by the way. So the Ukrainian parliament is about to adopt the electricity integration package, which is improving the regulatory frameworks for intensified trade with the European Union. And the regulatory authority has increased so-called price caps, which create much more space for the market to step in and create incentives for importing, market-based incentives to import electricity from the EU. The regulatory authority is working on the long-term capacity allocation rules for the interconnectors with Hungary, Romania, Slovakia, again, to make the market more predictable. So a lot is happening to deepen the trade and to open more market space for the trade between Ukraine and Moldova and the European Union, so that the resilience of the country can be improved. And the same applies to gas. We just observed on the Olena screen the intensified attacks of Russian army on the gas production facilities in October last year. That resulted in the significant drop of the production capacities in Ukraine, and in result, Ukraine has a gas deficit which is amounting up to 6.5 BCM for this winter. That requires Ukraine to import gas from outside. So that's why we see enhanced activities to improve the operations of the Trans-Balkan pipeline, so that the American LNG through Greece, Moldova, or Bulgaria, Romania, Moldova can penetrate Ukrainian market. On the other hand, we see the cargoes of gas being supplied from the Polish and hopefully also Lithuanian LNG terminals to get to the Ukraine, but also requires the Ukrainian gas market to be reformed so that there is a proper price signals which would allow Ukrainian companies to simply buy this international gas on the international markets, on the European market. And this is also something to happen. We call it reform of the PSO for the gas market, which is the discussion is ongoing. But the third element and the third pillar, I think, of this reform agenda is, of course, how to increase the incentives for the investments in the distributed generation capacities, and primarily, of course, renewables. And the reform of the support schemes for renewables in Ukraine is another topic which would require further attention. Some elements have been already done, for example, the separation of renewable energy surcharge from the transmission tariff. Some of them are to be done. And we are together with the European Commission working on the proper, roadmap how to deliver those reforms so that also the economic incentives will be in place to invest in the distributed, decentralized renewable generation in Ukraine. So to summarize, the very instant, quick support with the deliveries of the equipment which is needed now by the fund, and again, the Team Europe works. But you are, Amanda, fully right saying that the preparation for the new winter starts actually now, because the time is needed for providing equipment and installing them. And the second pillar, reforms in electricity, in gas and renewables. This is something which makes Ukraine only stronger by closer integration with the EU market. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This was very insightful, and I think also Ukraine has the great potential because of its gas storage facilities in the country, potentially in the future, to play a key role in European energy security, being able to do that, but also from its green energy opportunities, of which there are many. So I don't doubt that Ukraine will become a central pillar in all EU energy security initiatives going forward. So thank you, Artur. I will come back to you a bit later, but I want to turn now to Wioletta to hear a bit more about the support and the different instruments and initiatives that are actually being operationalized now by the Commission. I know your Commission is doing a wonderful job, along with many other colleagues. And what initiatives are on the agenda now to speed up this support for Ukraine?
Amanda, thank you very much for this introduction and for this invitation. Indeed, all questions linked to Ukraine and its energy security are very close to my Commissioner's heart. So this is something which is on the agenda all the time. In fact, some of the first things that the Commissioner did when in office were linked to Ukraine. But before I go to talk about the specific initiatives, I would just like to recall a few things linked to funding. Just to say that the EU is the largest donor to Ukraine, with some 2 billion euros in energy aid since the outbreak of the war. And the EU is also contributing via the Ukraine facility to the tune of some 1 billion for emergency gas purchases. This has been mentioned by both of my predecessors, both of the speakers. The gas purchases are, of course, emergency gas purchases are, of course, needed, and they will probably be needed even more. Now, Mr. Lorkowski spoke in some detail about the Ukraine energy support and here the pledges that are being channeled through it. This is, of course, very important, and we appreciate this work of energy community very much. In terms of in-kind support coming in the form of generators, spare parts, and other useful equipment flowing to Ukraine since the onset of the war, some of it through EU's own stocks of RESC-EU, and some through coordinated donations. They of course play an important role in our effort. So if I were to quote a few numbers, just to give you an idea of the magnitude of this effort, the assistance being delivered through the EU Civil Protection Mechanism included over 11,000 power generators, over 7,000 transformers, also a large number of auto transformers, and this provided power to over 9 million people in emergency. The question of electricity exports was just mentioned by Mr. Lorkowski. So the EU has increased this capacity to export to almost 3 gigawatt from just over 2 last winter. And this ensured that we could give maximum possible support to Ukraine via this route from the EU side. In addition, EU markets and infrastructure, of course, facilitates a continuous gas supply, and this is also something which plays a very, very important role. As we have listened about the increased attacks on gas infrastructure as the war was going on, and Ms. Pavlenko mentioned this, the Russian tactics of targeting different parts of Ukraine energy systems have changed over time. There was a moment when the storages were bombed. Another time the focus was on electricity, then on gas production facilities. So all of these things, of course, play. Now, in terms of the coordination that the EU is doing, so the Commission continues coordinating international support for Ukraine via the G7 plus Ukraine Energy Support Group. It is currently chaired by France, who's holding the G7 presidency. And this formation has mobilized to date some 7 billion euro in global aid. This group is meeting regularly, and as we speak, more partners are joining. So we have a lot of hope as far as this cooperation is concerned. I would just mention that that within that context, several member states declared since last autumn additional donations, and they will indeed be channeled through the energy support group. Now, when we discuss the preparations to this meeting today, you asked me a very interesting questions on the gaps. So whether it was the resource gap, the coordination gap, or a political issue in terms of how to keep Ukraine from blackouts. And I would say this: the EU, with its partners and with its institutions, with all the tools that we have at our disposal, we are maintaining a very high level of efforts on all fronts. So resources are flowing, coordination is being strengthened, boosted, and the political support, I would say, is unwavering, and it will definitely continue. But as the war is going on and the energy system is under constant attack, in fact, it seems that the energy system is actually at the very core of the Russian strategy of destruction of Ukraine and of. I mean, these attacks are just proving that they are trying to shut down all the critical, most basic societal functions. So, as this is going on, we with this assistance, and I'm sure I'm speaking to all of for all of us, we are facing a moving target, because the efforts are intensifying, but the attacks are also intensifying. So our efforts grow proportionally and try to keep up with the widening gaps of needs, but this is very difficult. So this, of course, begs the question of what can be done to stop the widening of the gap. And I think here, I mean, perhaps there could be many answers, but one of the answers is, of course, air defense and protection from further destruction. And we hope that this is something which will, this notion which will get some traction, and we will be able to provide more protection to the energy system of Ukraine.
Thank you. Wioletta, I totally agree with you about the need for more air defense systems and the Patriot interceptors and whatnot. But as we stand, there seems to be some obstacles to actually achieving more air defense systems. And to be frank, I mean, Ukraine's been asking for those air defense systems to be there for many months. In addition to sourcing from European countries, there's now the obstacle of the resistance to buy weapons from the United States. I mean, there seems to be increasing pressure not to purchase anything from the US. So how do you think this can be dealt with in the short term? I mean, should those European countries that actually have Patriot systems give them to Ukraine, or should we perhaps be more flexible in terms of these supplies from the US? But of course, there's also the issue, there's a waiting queue. So how do you see that could actually pan out?
This is indeed a very important and very sensitive conversation. It is true that these requests for air defense have been in the headlines for a long time, and of course, protecting the skies would be key, and this is something which we are striving for. Now, as you know, the discussion about what to purchase, who to purchase from, this discussion is ongoing. It's very difficult for me to say at this point how it's going to pan out. There is, of course, a trade-off between speed, which is speed of delivery, and what really can be done in Europe. Given how things are evolving, of course, the EU would be looking into strengthening its own capacity while helping Ukraine. So I think this is understandable. However, Ukraine needs some of these systems much quicker. So I would imagine that some compromise will be found to deliver to Ukraine quicker, and then also make sure that these capacities are being created and used already short, maybe not short, but midterm in Europe.
Thank you, Wioletta. I would like to turn to you now, Olena. Thank you for your patience. Your NGO, it does an amazing job. I mean, the role of civil society in terms of supporting Ukraine in this crisis is crucial. But your organization has been doing an amazing job, particularly in supporting communities and those particular individuals who are really at risk. So could you share with us the priorities of your work and where you see the main challenges now on the ground?
Yeah, thank you for your question, Amanda. I would start with a basic, what was already mentioned by previous speakers, that this winter is really characterized by sustained sub-zero temperatures across the country, across Ukraine, which is significantly intensifying the impact of all this repeated attack on energy infrastructure. And definitely we all in Ukraine feel it a lot, especially when it is -20, when it is -15 in the regions. When speaking about our field operations across the country, what we are witnessing is not only simply seasonal hardship now. This is serious regression in basic living conditions for populations. After almost already 4 years since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, communities that began stabilizing some essential services are once again facing large-scale disruption. So over the past years, humanitarian actors, together with local authorities and communities, we all invested substantial effort into restoring heating networks, rehabilitating water systems, equipping hospitals with backup power, and supporting small businesses also to restart. There was a transition from emergency relief toward recovery and resilience, but repeated large-scale energy attacks are now reversing much of this progress that was done, unfortunately. We are once again addressing critical survival needs at scale, like heating, water, electricity, needs that communities had already started to regain control over. Speaking about infrastructure that was rehabilitated, it has been damaged again. In regions, for example, like Sumy, facilities which were repaired after early attacks have subsequently been destroyed again. And when temperatures remain below zero, energy disruption becomes life-threatening. Heating systems fail, water pumping stations are not operational, not functioning. Collective centers hosting displaced people struggle to maintain minimum standards for them. Hospitals must rely on continuously backup systems to sustain intensive care units or oxygen supply and other healthcare services. The impact is national-wise, and what I want to highlight is also while the highest levels of hostilities occur definitely along the front line, but energy insecurity affects community across the whole country. However, the funding attention remains heavily concentrated in highly risky areas, leaving thousands of vulnerable populations in collective sites, for example, without sufficient support. And vulnerability linked to energy instability extends beyond frontline geography. There's also a serious economic dimension. Although the comprehensive data is still emerging, it is already clear that prolonged energy disruption significantly affects livelihoods. Small and medium-sized enterprises rely on predictable electricity, but interruptions reduce output, increase operational costs, and slow recovery. So economic recovery initiatives that were beginning to stabilize communities are now again at risk of being neglected. And also, this is the instability. The distinction between humanitarian and development support is now become significantly blurred, reinforcing heating systems, decentralizing energy supply, installing battery storage, and supporting municipal resilience are no longer long-term development objectives. They are immediate life-saving measures in this very context, where infrastructure continues to be deliberately targeted. So,
thank you, Olena. And maybe I can just have a follow-up question. I mean, where do you see at the moment the biggest gaps between, the international support and the actual needs from communities, which is no doubt evolving? And is this evolution sufficiently taken into account by the partners and the supporters?
Speaking about the most significant gaps between international support mechanisms and community needs, first of all, it's related to timing, it relates to flexibility and risk tolerance. As it was already mentioned by the previous speaker, that effective preparation for winter energy crisis reminds funding to be available well in advance. And ideally for us humanitarians, like during the summer months and under flexible conditions as well. Energy resilience cannot be constructed reactively once weather has begun, once the winter started and infrastructure damage has already occurred. However, the funding is frequently disbursed late in the year and under strict budget frameworks. As a result, then we often respond after communities have already endured weeks without reliable heating or water or electricity. And then in so low temperatures as this winter, even short delays can have life-threatening implications for could be elderly populations, persons with disabilities, and those living in the poorly insulated housing, for example. We are operational in the environment that requires rapid and also sometimes high stakes decisions. Procurement also, this is a big problem because procurement strategies must adapt. Budget allocations may be required within like few days, not months or long-term periods. So many funding instruments are not designed to accommodate this level of operational agility at the moment. Then also one big issue is market constraints for the complicated response efforts. Demand for energy-related equipment remains extremely high, especially this winter. So basic items such as electric, even blankets, for example, can become unavailable at a scale. And speaking about prices for generators, for batteries and other essential equipment, they are much higher and in the very difficult periods. And also suppliers require extended lead time. So delayed funding therefore results in higher costs, in longer procurement timelines, and in reduced coverage. So additionally, geographic prioritization of funding also it's important. It leaves important gap. While frontline areas are prioritized, quite often then energy-related vulnerability exists across the country. Collective sites and deteriorated housing conditions outside the immediate frontline are often fall outside the priority of funding envelopes, and despite hosting a large number of displaced people or economically vulnerable populations. So finally, energy resilience must be understood as cross-sectorial. Stable energy supply underpins healthcare delivery, water access, protection outcomes, displacement prevention, and economic stability. So to address the current crisis effectively, support mechanisms must evolve towards earlier disbursement, greater flexibility, and risk sharing. Without these adjustments, I think we remain in a reactive posture, responding to deterioration after communities have already endured prolonged hardship rather than preventing it. And prevention is very important in this very situation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to come back to you, Olena, with a couple of additional questions. I would like to come back to this topic of long-term planning. I mean, for the next winter season. I mean, do you see this as something that's already being planned for or taken seriously? I mean, I know we're not at the end of this winter, but still the next winter is upon us. And my second point would be something what Mr. Lorkowski made reference to in terms of the fact that Ukraine is now receiving more energy from the neighbors. I mean, electricity and gas. But at the same time, I mean, the Russians are becoming more daring in terms of their hybrid activity with drones and whatnot in Europe. So is there a threat that Russia will attempt to increasingly attack on the other side of the border, energy and infrastructure? And do you think Europeans are, sufficiently preparing for this, challenge, if I can put it that way?
Thank you so much for your questions. Regarding the winter preparation, I have to say that last year the ministry and the government started to talk about winter preparation already in March, which already was very good, because usually we start thinking about this more closer to May. Regarding this year, we already see that cities are discussing the winter preparation for the next year, for the next period. For example, yesterday, the Kyiv mayor already created a separate council or working group on development of the some solutions for the next winter. So the engineers, the international partners will start working on the next heating season in Kyiv already now. And I believe very similar should start already now in many other cities. Regarding the national level, I think that now there are these discussions what exactly Ukraine need in order to be prepared for the next winter. The problem is that when you repair some damaged infrastructure, especially generation, in a few months, Russia destroy it again. So the question remains if, for example, we have some time, we repair thermal power plants, which are big. They create up to 1 gigawatt of additional capacity. And then closer to August, Russia just destroys them again. It just brings us to the 0 point regarding the winter preparation. That's what happened in 2025. Russia intensified its attacks in October, and it allowed us to do all the preparation by September. If you search the statements of the government as of August, the government was quite positive regarding all the preparations for winter. and it took just 2 months to destroy the generation, gas production facilities, and transmission system, distribution system, to get to the point where we are now. So definitely the government will be working, and I think maybe in a month or even faster, there will be requests again to the Norwegian colleagues, to European colleagues, regarding additional gas volumes needed for Ukraine for next winter season. There will be discussion how to increase the import from Ukraine, what can help us to repair some additional generation in Ukraine, or how to install more distributed generation. But we also, in parallel, should think about the solutions. I mean, how to avoid the situation when we have everything prepared in August, and then in September, October, we have again the huge attacks and come back to the 0 point. Regarding your second question on attacks, possible attacks in Europe, let me be honest here. In Ukraine, people are asking questions why NATO members are not activate Article 5 when the drones are already, Russian drones are already flying on the NATO territory. This, if you saw the yes Prime Minister and yes Minister, it's a movie in the UK. They discussed so-called salami tactics when, and I think they discussed Russia when it's just attacks without one big serious attack, just small steps to invade and small steps to get to the target. So that could be such small steps which Russia will activate and will test every time the readiness of the European partners to respond. And regarding the energy infrastructure, correct me if I'm wrong, but what is happening now in the Baltic Sea, what is happening with some cables which Russia is cutting, those are also the warning signals which should be taken seriously into account by the EU. Again, I would like to advertise that International Energy Agency yesterday published, I think, 10 lessons learned from Ukraine, how to protect and how to make the energy system more resilient based on Ukrainian lessons learned. So let me suggest that those are very practical lessons learned, which probably we all, as European countries and Ukraine as future EU member, should already start integrating into our policies.
Absolutely, and that's a good segue back to you, Mr. Lorkowski, to ask you if lessons learned from Ukraine are being already taken into account. I mean, I've seen in Ukraine actually that above some critical infrastructure, you actually have these I don't know if you'd call them nets, so something over the top to protect the infrastructure from Russian drones, I think, in on some energy structures. But to what extent? I mean, I know the EU is looking into this, but to what extent is this being, speeded up? Because the sort of incursions from Russia by different means seem to be on the increase.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, indeed, Ukraine today is, let's say, a laboratory on how to protect the energy systems in practice, and some lessons are to be taken from this very sorrow and unfortunate developments we are observing, and this is actually happening. The Secretariat is involved in a couple of projects of sharing the experience of the technicians in Ukraine towards the European Union companies, where they can just simply share the experience and the practical insights of how to make the systems more resilient. However, there are also some, let's say, policy decisions to be taken in the European Union, I believe. So, for example, if you have to take the decision as the COE of the company, whether you would rather keep the maintenance team within the company to have this capacity in-house, or whether you would rather outsource this maintaining services to the external company. I mean, the cost calculation might suggest to go for the second option. But if you look at the Ukrainian situation, many companies, they can continue operating just because of the fact that they kept the maintenance services as an in-house capability within the company, and they haven't outsourced it to the third companies. Because if they would be outsourced the third companies, then those maintenance repairment company can simply break the contract saying, guys, this is the force majeure and we cannot continue providing the service. So this kind of dilemma is to be answered. The second I would say is decentralized versus centralized generation capacities. So you have to also take the policy decision to what extent you can decentralize the system. And now we see, also based out on Olena just explained, that Russia has targeted in September, October last year, that what has been rebuilt during the last summer. And probably the cost of doing that, if the system would be properly decentralized, would be much higher for Russia. I'm not saying that Russia will not do it, but the cost would be much higher. So instead of targeting a huge thermal power plant, the cost of targeting several smaller renewable or gas pistons, it is not comparable. The another issue is the intensity of the interconnectivity of energy systems. So now we have certain standards in the European Union. We have certain standards of assessment of the risks for the continuation of the operation of the system. We should ask ourselves whether we should invest money and give the proper incentives to the companies, in particular the distribution companies, to make them able to function with the isolated energy islands. Something like that is now being conceptualized in Kiev, according to my knowledge. So this is another issue. Very important is the issue of the passive protection. I mean, you have been discussing the active protection, the issue of interceptors, the anti-missile systems. But what is under the control of the energy companies is the passive protection, the gabions, and other concrete installations which might protect the system. And very good lessons can be learned from the experience of the Ukrainian companies, how to make it effective way to avoid the damage which would be excessive, and this is something which needs to be reconsidered. The issue of the cybersecurity. So before Europe will start bombing, I mean, the cybersecurity always is the key element, because the cyber attacks will be the first wave of the attack, and the question is to what extent we are now ready. And by the way, we are now discussing also with the Ukrainian, not only with the Ukrainian counterparts, how to improve the cyber security regulations for the grid. The identification and ensuring the existence of the supply chains. This is something which we very much observe in Ukraine. I mean, if not done properly, we can then observe the long lead periods for the supply, or we can even experience the interrupted supply chains if the if the suppliers are not identified in the close proximity to the energy systems. And one of the factors why Ukraine is continuing defending and improving its resilience is the fact that Ukraine has an industrial base, which is allowing Ukraine to continue producing, also with the support of the fund. The Secretariat is managing the equipment for the Ukrainian system, and this is something which I believe is of critical importance. And of course, last but not least, the logistical chains. This is something we have to, think through from the very beginning. We have just experienced, organizing the logistic chain of some equipment from United States, how to do it in a quick and reliable way, whether our roads and the bridges are prepared to transport, huge mammoth, auto transformers, and et cetera, very technical issues. And this logistic element is hard to be overseen. So several elements, several ingredients, let's say, of the proper planning for the future, and several lessons already learned in Ukraine, which Ukraine can offer as a very unfortunate laboratory of how to make not only Ukrainian but also European system more resilient in the future.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lorkowski. I want to ask you more or less the same question, Wioletta, in terms of the lessons that have been learned from Ukraine. What do you think are the most relevant ones, and are these lessons already being put into place or implemented in EU member states?
Thank you very much, Amanda. And what's just been said or laid out quite meticulously by Mr. Lorkowski leaves little for me to add, except that I would like to emphasize the importance and the urgency of applying some of these lessons. I think we should not be under the illusion that there is a lot of time to apply these lessons. I would also say that what we have seen over the 4 years of war in Ukraine is that the battlefield is changing very quickly. The technologies used are changing very quickly, and the adaptations are also done very, very quickly. So the word laboratory sounds horrific, but it is really something which we watch still from safety and distance. But this reality in a situation of a conflict could at some point become ours. Or I mean, I don't want to sound alarmist, but I think it's very, very important to already think what would happen to the energy system in any any situation of any possible hostilities. So there is a framework in the EU. There is the resilience of critical entities, and there's also legislation which focuses on resilience in terms of cybersecurity of energy infrastructure. But I still think that we need to rethink how we're going to actually ensure this resilience. And within that, I think the central issue is the question of the architecture of the system. If we put even the question of protection of the system as it is aside, because this almost goes without saying. So this is protection from, of course, cyber attacks, which are probably, as rightly pointed out, would be the first ones to come, and they are also partly coming. The cables were mentioned. Infrastructure is already being targeted, not at a large scale, but is being targeted. And I would like to come back to the question of the Article 5. Indeed, it's I think the the way the Russians are operating is that they need to still remain under the threshold of anything of any reason to actually invoke the article. That's why the actions are hybrid, many, but still small enough to stay under the radar. But I think no one is under any illusions that the energy system is being targeted. So the question of resilience aside, I think what probably will be a lesson learned from Ukraine is that the system needs to be more distributed. So more smaller scale, more independent, and less attack prone installations, basically. And how this should be done, I think we need to give it some thought. But even from an economic point of view, the smaller the installations, the less economical it would be to hit them with some very powerful weapons. So we will be watching these lessons closely, and the question of energy security and energy system security is rising very quickly in the agenda. It's going to be absolutely central, and that's something which we of course have on the radar.
Thank you very much, Wioletta. I would encourage the audience to keep putting their questions. I see that our panelists have been responding to them in written form in the chat box. That's quite okay, of course, but please do keep putting your questions. We still have about 20 minutes left, so there's still time. I want to come back to you, Olena, to talk a bit more about the humanitarian work that you're doing on the ground, which is, really important. There's many vulnerable individuals in Ukraine suffering throughout this deep crisis. Could you give us a sort of picture of the most vulnerable individuals or groups that you're actually dealing with in Ukraine? And also on a more local context, I mean, how are you helping the more sort of people who are living in smaller towns and villages during this difficult period?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Definitely the assistance is very different and across the country, and definitely frontline communities are the most vulnerable communities in terms of vulnerabilities. Many older people, people with disabilities have no opportunity to leave their homes. They have no economical resilience. They have no capacity. And we are supporting the communities across the front line. What we did this year, because knowing that the winter will be harsh, but we didn't know that it will be that harsh as it is, we distributed the fuel briquettes, for example, for the communities in autumn, so that they are already prepared for the whole winter. We also distributed cash assistance for those people who can purchase themselves the fuel, what they want, what is more convenient for their household to keep on warm during the winter. Speaking about cities, in the response to these very attacks, latest attacks on Kyiv, Dnipro, and all the big cities in Ukraine, we are supporting the invisibility points, Punkty Nezlamnosti, together with our partners, mainly RCR, Red Cross Ukraine, and other humanitarian organizations who are supporting with different kind of equipment, keeping people warm there. We are also delivering the water so that people can come and have hot drinks. Speaking about hospitals, this is also a huge priority for us because healthcare systems also needs to operate and continue operational. Recently, we delivered very important equipment. This is interrupted electricity equipment that provides the opportunity for the intensive care unit of Kyiv Regional Hospital to continue operational even in case of the complete blackout. So that we're trying to make sure that institutions, hospitals are keeping their capacities, that they are operational even in the very difficult situations. We are also supporting schools to make sure that education can continue even during the blackouts. We're supporting children with the equipment for the online education, but now it's super complicated issue, and it's we need to adapt our programming to the evolving crisis. And for example, we were not working in Kiev. We have the office and we have the offices throughout the country, but we never thought that we would be responding so fast in Kiev. And then the situation evolves, and then it also requires a lot of communication with the donors and this flexibility of the funding, because we have certain projects in certain areas, and then we need to communicate with them. We need to ask for derogation that we can implement this project in different area. Then we need to also justify the needs, etc. So this is a complex situation. It's a very difficult situation. And what we also do, and we are supporting the partners who are doing evacuations from the frontline locations, which is also very pressing issue for local communities. So this is more or less in a nutshell what we are doing.
Thank you so much. I'll come back to you again, Olena. Could you give us, a bit of a picture about how the tasks are shared in Kiev? We've seen that the mayor has also been very active in reaching out to different partners for support. Mr. Klitschko, who is a very well-known figure. How is this coordinated between the different branches?
Thank you. This is interesting question, because it's not a secret that there was tensions between the mayor of Kiev and the politicians of national scale in Ukraine, and there were several attempts to remove Klitschko from his position. Nevertheless, he of course stayed, because this is he became a mayor through the elections. I have to say that after 3 attacks which happened in Kiev, it was end of December, and then in January, and now early February. First, maybe a few weeks, there were again some tries to understand who is guilty, who is not. But then, if you look at how the system works now, I think this tensions and this fight is no longer a priority, because it's obvious that if you have combined heating plant, which is a big target, no city cannot protect combined heating plant by itself. You need much stronger protection. You need air defense. So it's like no way you can do that but just by your own. And those combined heating plants are destroyed to zero. So they're really fully destroyed. They cannot generate anything, neither heat nor electricity. So now I think all this, what's happened in Kiev, it's kind of united. The government and the city team, they are working, trying to coordinate with each other. We know that the mayor is trying to involve as much support as possible from the international partners, and also the equipment and something bigger than only let's say state machines, the government can organize and deal with. The government takes it on itself. So to be able to provide more cogeneration units in a bigger scale than just a mayor can do, and also some additional generation equipment. So I would say that we finally see some cooperation, unfortunately after really serious destructions, but it gives hope that we will be able to prepare for winter in coordination with national and local level. I wanted to mention, if I may, 2 more points. First, talking about the lessons learned, maybe to what Wioletta already said, I would add 2 more. One point, one lessons learned, which is important, is to have additional equipment, some, I don't know, stocks, where in case of something, every company could reach out and get this, because what is really problematic is to find this equipment on the market very fast. And second is revision of the nuclear sector. Because what happens in Ukraine, Russia doesn't attack nuclear power plants themselves, but Russia attacks substations around. And with that, it creates, first, it demands from the nuclear power plants to decrease their generation. And second, it creates issues and problems for the security as well. So Europe, EU does have the nuclear generation. It is stable generation capacity for European countries, but those risks and threats also should be taken into account. And my final point, also connected to the nuclear, because we didn't speak about that today a lot, but it's important. I think we still need to bring nuclear to the sanctions policy, because what we see now with Russia, the same what we had with the gas wars, now the same is happening now in the nuclear sector. Russia is building nuclear power plants in Central Asia, in Africa, in Latin America, with the same goal, the same what they are doing with Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plants. They build, own, operate this nuclear power plant, and with that, they have a huge impact on the national policy and national decision making. And I think Russia should feel that first, this policy will not work in the long term, and second, that Europe does understand all these threats and will not allow to use nuclear policy as a, either to bypass sanctions or to keep cooperation with the EU. Because for me, I think I don't understand how French Framatome can build a facility to produce nuclear fuel based on Rosatom license in Germany. It just sounds absolutely fantastic for me in the middle of the full-scale invasion. Thank you.
Yes, I agree with you. It's I don't think Rosatom has been sanctioned. I mean, it's still cooperating with I mean, not only with France, I think with Hungary as well. But maybe we can throw this question over to you, Mr. Lorkowski, to see where you stand on the issue of the ongoing, I mean, the nuclear threat from Russia, from the cooperation that we still have with Russia, but I mean also the threat from the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant, which Russia is still operating and actually occupying and turned it into some sort of, military outpost to a certain degree. It's a destabilizing factor in this region. So would you like to share your views on the nuclear question?
Thank you very much, Amanda. What I can say is just only to repeat that what Olena just said, that unfortunately, Russia is continuing attacks on the substations, which are both evacuating electricity from the nuclear power plants in Ukraine, and also Russia is prioritizing attacks on those substations which are allowing Ukraine to import electricity from the European Union. And this is the reality which we are facing, and this is the big role of the Ukrainian transmission system operator, Ukrenergo, and the support which is given to this company to as quickly as possible to regain the integrity of the electricity system as such. However, Ukraine has already proved its ability to operate in the system in the let's say not as a whole, but rather in the islands, which is of course making on one hand the Ukrainian energy systems in that way more vulnerable to the further attacks, but on the other hand it allows still to continue supplying some, at least, or selected groups of the consumers in the country. But again, the integrity of the system is key, also for the objective of evacuating the electricity from the nuclear power plants from the nuclear power plants in Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Maybe staying on the same issue of the nuclear question with you, Wioletta. I mean, I know that the EU has done so much in terms of sanctions on Russia in the energy sector and elsewhere. But do you think we will be moving closer to perhaps this final step on the nuclear operator? which is still managing to do some business with some European states?
It is hard for me to comment on what would be the next set of sanctions. The fact that we have had already 20 packages means that the thinking is going on about how to hit and how to impose a change of behavior on Russia with these different packages. It's not I cannot really say what will be in the next one and whether we're going to target this operator. Now, in terms of nuclear generally, well, this is of course part of our policy of Repower EU. Basically getting rid of all energy imports from Russia. So at some stage, nuclear fuel will also be tackled, and this will mean, of course, this will mean the end of business in Europe. Now, it is interesting what Ms. Pavlenko mentioned about nuclear power stations being constructed elsewhere. This is, of course, very, very important. And when we look into the future and geopolitically, of course, these nuclear power stations ultimately will be a way to exert some influence on some of these countries, or maybe even all of these countries, which will host and use such capacities, such facilities, and what they're going to matter for the overall energy mix. So I cannot really answer the question as asked, but I would like to just stress that the Russian activity within the nuclear sector is on our radar, and it is not excluded, of course, that it will be systematically targeted also.
Thank you, Wioletta. We're nearly out of time, but I'd like to put one question to all of you, starting with you, Alena. Maybe it's an obvious thing for a think tanker to ask regarding the EU, but at this sort of crisis situation in Ukraine, I mean, what is the one thing that you would like to see from the EU immediately to further support Ukraine through this very difficult crisis?
Speaking about the support, it's flexible funding, as I was already mentioning, like flexible funding, timely fundings, especially for such activities as we are implementing, because we really need to start them in advance in summer, but ideally, as was mentioned today by the previous speaker, like we can now already start in being prepared for the next winter. And also flexible geography of implementation of humanitarian assistance and development assistance.
Thank you. I can't really put that question in the same way to you, Mr. Lorkowski, so I'll ask you to say what would be your top priority. I mean, the first priority you have now going forward.
Thank you, Amanda. I mean, as I said previously, the Europe team works and the support which is provided is efficient. What I would like to be recognized is that what has been just mentioned by Olena, to recognize that the preparation for the next winter starts now, and we have to make whatever is needed to not to wait until August, September, but to start preparing now. And I'm very glad that Ukraine is being on the top of the agenda of the meetings of the ministers of energy. We expect soon the ministerial meeting to take place, and we hope that this kind of message will be shared by the EU ministers, that we are remaining ready to start preparing the next winter for Ukraine.
That sounds like a great idea. Wioletta.
If I were to say what would be the top priority, I did mention that in my first intervention, and I really think that protection is key. Protection of the energy system, because we will definitely step up the preparations. We are part of the group discussing already how to get ready for next winter, but highlighting the question of protection of energy infrastructure is absolutely key.
Thank you. And the last word goes to you, Olena.
3 priorities. I'm sorry, I cannot prioritize one. Protection, I definitely agree. For everything what we still have, additional equipment for everything what we will need and still need. And I would say third is people, because we have a lot of people who are mobilized and on front line, and we need more people who can help us to install the different solutions, to think about how to further develop the energy system, how to decentralize it. So we need people. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I need to close this webinar. I would like to thank all of you for joining us today, for all of your excellent contributions. I would also like to thank the audience. I pray that winter ends as soon as possible in Ukraine, that spring will come very soon, even as early as tomorrow, if possible, so that the Ukrainian friends and colleagues across the country don't have to endure the absolutely heinous conditions that they've been living in now for the last 2 months, at least. And of course, that Ukraine will continue to get and boosted support to be able to end this war with a Ukrainian victory. So thanks again to all of you. EPC will be continuing to work on Ukraine. We have a large program of activities and publications that remains the top priority for us. Our next event will actually be on the anniversary of the war. This will be the 4th time, and it pains me to say that. That we're marking the 4th anniversary of the full-scale invasion. We will have an event on the 24th. So those of you who can or are in Brussels, please look out for the invitation and please do join us. And with that, I wish you a good end of the afternoon and an evening. Thank you.